All right, good morning, everybody. So we are going to start um, with Stuart Bache. I practiced that.
That's
Yay,
one.
I got that right. And we're gonna, well, not we, I take no credit for this. This is not my area of expertise. So not we, but Stuart is from the Books Covered team, and he's gonna talk about um, AI art for book cover design. So super, super exciting. I'm going to let Stuart just take over from here, and you can probably give yourself more of an intro if you would like. And I will keep admitting people as you go.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I'll share the screen first. Uh, let's go to that one and just make sure it's working. And okay, hopefully everyone can see that. Yeah, fantastic. Let's put this away. Hi everyone. I'm Stuart Bache, and I'm going to be talking about AI art for authors. It's still very new area. And there's obviously it changes weekly, so there'll be things that I'll mention in this that may actually be different next week. Um, Before I do, let's just introduce myself. I'm Stuart Bache. I design book covers. I've been doing it for about almost 20 years now. Um, I've worked with Stephen King. I predominantly work with Mark Dawson. You might know Mark Dawson from the self-publishing formula and the self-publishing show, and James Blatch. Um, and I do all sorts of genres. In fact, I've worked across every genre. I have worked for probably half of my career in traditional publishing. So I started off at Hodder and Stoughton, and I've been an art director at places like HarperCollins and One World, and I've worked for Penguin and Puffin. I also illustrate children's books and covers on the occasion when I have time. And I've been designing for self-published authors almost exclusively for almost 10 years now. And I do it almost, I think the maximum I do per year projects is about 250 books a year, which can be hard. I've got two little children, so I probably don't do that as much anymore. Anyway, so that's me, and that's some of my work. I thought I'd probably best to start off with discussing a little bit of what AI art actually is. Um, so I don't know how many people know how it works. There's a lot of misinformation out there. But essentially, what AI art does is it does actually create unique visuals. And it has its own algorithm that has been essentially taught how to create these visuals based on prompts. So, what some of the misinformation, and I was part of this, I actually believed this for a little while. So, I've been working with AI now for about 2 years. And a lot of people worry that AI art is actually an amalgamation of lots and lots of images from that it has taken from the internet or from different places, and then it's just sort of reassembling them into a new image. And actually, that's not true at all. Um, it's essentially a it's essentially like learning. So it's AI is just sort of the wrong name for it, really. It's not artificial intelligence, it's machine learning. Um, what they have done is they've fed it images with data, so maybe a sort of metadata, and that metadata will say what that image is. So if you have a picture of a photograph of a vase with flowers in it, it will say that it's a vase, what color the vase is. It will say it will look at like the textures and the flowers and the colors of the flowers, all that sorts of thing. So and then it will learn about it, and it's like over a long time this process is going back and forth, where it's taking this data and reassembling and trying different things out, and then seeing what's correct and what's closest to that, to the real thing. So that when you actually say, can you create a image of a vase of flowers for me, it can do so or get as close approximation as possible. And then it's sort of like trial and error and back and forth. So that's happened over time. Obviously, the more images you feed into it, the more information it has. Um, and that's also in terms of artistic styles and elements. Now, this is where I guess it is controversial in some respects because it has taken images from painters and photographers, people like that, that has been either free on the internet to find, um, uh, and it basically it's learned what certain techniques are. So it can talk about, it can do watercolors, it can do oil paintings, it can do digital illustration and art, all sorts of different things, different styles of photograph, different styles of camera, all sorts of things. The vast majority of these images were available and had licenses and could actually be used for learning. There are some people out there, Stable Diffusion, who may have appropriated images from places they probably shouldn't have, maybe not even knowing about it anyway. That's going into something that is, this is not what this is about. But for the majority, this is what's happening, this is what's coming. It's sort of the dam's opened. It's worth learning about and understanding. I know for sure, in fact, I know definitely because I've spoken to some of the CEOs of these stock image companies, but Shutterstock already are using their images with permission and have their own AI creation for art on their site already. So if you have a subscription, you can already use their AI art creator. I know that there are major, massive stock image sites, well-known ones that are already creating, using, and once again with permission, so technically ethical, permission from photographers and artists. So I'm going to be looking at Midjourney today. So whether Midjourney is still around in a couple of years, I don't know, but they're growing in size and they have a lot of money now backing them, and a lot of these stock image sites are creating their own. So one way or another, this is happening. So it's worth learning about. And so, as I mentioned briefly before, it creates using prompts. So if you've used ChatGPT or anything similar to that, it's, you use a prompt, you say, please do this. Can you do this? Can you write this for me? Can you write an email for me? And then it does it. That's essentially what this does. You need a prompt. The prompt has the information. You can make it as detailed as you like, and then it will create an image for you using what it's learned. Okay, that's just kind of an overview of what AI art is. So with that in mind, I'm going to be using Midjourney today and just giving you a sort of overview of the basics. And I'm going to be creating a character. So this is, my wife's an author, Natasha Bache. I've been, it's rather than using one of my clients, I spoke to her and she gave me permission. It's the easiest permission I could get was asking my wife. So that's nice and easy for me. And so I've been creating these images for her adverts because I manage her adverts as well with Facebook. Okay, so let's get into it. So just a quick overview of Midjourney. If you've never used it before, you sign up for Midjourney, you can use that link there. If you want to take a note, I'll leave it up on the screen for a little while anyway. And essentially, all the details are on that site. Actually, it tells you, it's a great guide about how to start, how to set up your account. Because even though you have to sign in with Midjourney and get a subscription with them, you actually have to access the bots, the Midjourney bot, via a Discord app. So Discord is a separate app, but it will all do that for you, and that link up at the top will actually go through everything for you and tell you what you need to do, and in step-by-step instructions. And paid subscriptions can go from anything from $10 a month and that will give you access to a certain amount of images or prompts, and using it to create prompts and images. And then you go in there and you select a channel. I mean, I'm not going to go too much detail because it's kind of difficult through this sort of thing. But you have to select a channel to actually start typing this stuff in. Once you get into it, it makes sense. And once you actually see the page, it will make sense. And then you just start creating. And so what I've done is I've put a video together quickly and edited it a little bit so that it's, because it can take a little while sometimes. And you'll see as people, because it's a bit like social media, Discord. It's like Twitter or Facebook, where you see a conversation and you see yours that there, and you've typed that out, and then as new ones start to come in, yours gets shifted. So it's constantly like fighting and finding where your actual stuff is. So anyway, here we go. So this is Discord, and this is Midjourney's bot in Discord. As you can see, so on the side here, I'm in, it says at the top, it says newbies 46. That is the channel that I'm in, that I'm using. It tends to be the most open. There are lots of channels. You just choose a channel and you start creating. This is not my work, by the way. This is someone else's. But I will show you, I'll start fresh. So at the bottom here, you'll see it says message, newbies 46. And you start every prompt with slash imagine, and then it starts. You'll see how it goes. So I'll start the video off. So slash imagine, and then comes up with a prompt. I've put this prompt in. This is the least detailed sort of prompt. See, as you can see, it just sort of jumps back and forth. I've sped this up as well. And slowly the image starts to get created. And as I say, I've used quite a basic prompt for this, so I haven't put in too many details in terms of style and aspect ratio or anything like that. So these are the images that have been created. I quite like that one at the top. So at the top here, you have the option to have a variation, which is the V, or you can upscale, but we'll do variation first. So essentially a variation is, you're taking that image and I want to see several more based on that image, which is what's happening now. It's taking that same image and creating variations of that image. So the person will look similar, but the background and everything will change. There we are. So then you can choose which one you actually like. And what we'll do here is we'll upscale. So we'll U2. So we're choosing the second image. So we're upscaling 2. And that's what it looks like. That's the high res. You can save that if you want, or you can zoom out. I'm doing a variation, but I'm doing a strong variation. So I want it to look completely different. I want to see what it looks like with maybe some different poses. And so that's going to so go through a variation from that image there, and create some different poses in the same sort of setting. The flowers will be the same, the window lighting and everything will be the same. And then you can select the one that you like. Once again, you can upscale it. So I'm going to upscale 3, which basically upscales means I can use that as the high res image. So there it is. And I'm going to zoom out by 2, just to give me some extra space around the image to use maybe for some marketing or that kind of thing. As you can see, it's starting to zoom out already, create some same image, but it's the same central image, but what's around it is going to be a little bit different. Yeah, so almost done. And then you can select the one you like, and I'm going to select image 3, just the bottom left, and I'll upscale that image. And there it is. And that's the final image. So, and that's actually without really using too much, a lot of information in terms of lighting or types of camera or anything like that. it's very basic. So you can just pretty much type in what you want and it will start doing it for you. Now you can obviously go into more detail, but I actually I like working this way. So anyway, so that's a very basic way of creating a character image in Midjourney with a very simple and basic prompt, and then upscaling an image, making variations of that image, and going back and forth. Now you can spend, and as a lot of people do, an hour or so going back and forth to try and get it as what you want it to be. But I think actually most of the time they're really good as they are. I'll show you some examples of what I've done for my wife's book, which is sort of a more witchy theme book with her characters. I put a bit more detail in with these, so I put the characters' details in, the things that they do. So what's really interesting with these images, so the one on the left of the woman, there is a way of taking that image and then adding it back into Midjourney and saying, take this image, but I want her to look like this. So I want her to be showing some magic power, for example. And the output was the one that's on the right. So it's the same girl or close enough. And that's really great that you can actually do that so that you're not constantly having different images for the same character. Right, so just saw a question actually about who owns the copyright. Um, so Midjourney themselves say that you own the image. It's like a stock image site. That's what they say. However, copyright is really difficult at the moment in terms of AI. We can go into it a bit later if you like, but it, it's very new and lots of regulation hasn't come in yet. It's been written. EU are writing stuff about it at the moment, putting some laws in place. I know in the US at the moment, it is stated that any image completely created from AI, so without your help at all, outside of a prompt, obviously, is going to be it can't be copywritten because it's not created by you. But that might change and things might change, but that is how it is at the moment. The middle person is it's not the age, that's her grandma. That's her grandmother who's starts at the beginning of the book, and that she passes away unfortunately, and her granddaughter comes back and tries to solve the murder. Okay. Right, so I'm going to talk about creating Facebook adverts in Midjourney. This is what I've been doing for my wife. It's actually a great way of producing a series of images and not spending a huge amount of time going back and forth designing them. I design Facebook adverts quite often for my clients. I've been doing this for my wife because it's been a great way of learning about it myself. For me, and what I'm asked for the most in terms of ad dimensions are still the 400 by 628 pixels. It's just a Facebook ad, but obviously, some people do square and some people do videos and different things. When I ask my clients what size they want, they almost always say this. So that's why I'm creating them in this size. So I'm using a 16 by 9 aspect ratio, which is a little larger, but it's essentially the same size. But it gives me a little bit of more art to work with when I add it into the ad itself. So in Midjourney, you can actually you can tell it what size you want your images to be. If you don't, they'll just do a square like you saw before. And what you do is you add a little bit of code at the end, which is a -- AR, which is aspect ratio. Then you add your ratio. And then when it's producing those images for you, it will produce it in a rectangle to that ratio. So that's what's classed as a parameter. There are several parameters. The two most used are S for stylization and C for chaos. Stylization goes from 0, which is what basically going with the prompt, to 1,000, which is, as artistic as you want. So it will move a bit away from the prompt. It will make it as, it will uh, up the contrast and add elements in that you haven't thought of. Sometimes it can be really good. Sometimes it can be terrible. And chaos is very similar. So 0 chaos means that it's the prompt. 100 is the maximum. 100, I'll show you in a minute, doesn't really listen to the prompt at all, but it can create something that is pretty good. It will be kind of right, but it's worth giving it a go. So I'm going to show you some examples I've done with some of my wife's advertising. So this is the prompt down here, on the bottom left, which is a cinematic photograph from above of an old wooden table during morning. There are pagan-styled herbs and tinctures on the table. Now, I've written during the morning, just because that's the kind of light I was thinking about. That kind of more like cooler light sometimes you get in the morning where it's still a bit dark. And I mentioned pagan because it was easier than saying something like witchcraft, which might add in some sort of occult type stuff, which isn't really what her books are about. Her books are much more. Her grandmother was a hedge witch, so it's a bit kind of more about making little, not potions, but headache tablets and that kind of thing. Not love potions or anything. And so as you can see also, I've added the aspect ratio of 16:9. So it gives you this nice rectangle, which is great for advertising and for Facebook. And the S is the style, and I've added 250. I found 250 to be a nice sort of middle ground, really. I know it's not quite middle ground, 500 would be, but 250 tends to give me the sort of, it's not too basic, it's not too, it sort of adds a little extra element, makes it really start a little bit more stylized, thinks about it from different angles. These 3 images are all from the exact same prompt that I've kind of been, I've chosen one. I've said that's really good. That's variations of this one. This one's really good variations of this one. But and these are quite good for backgrounds as well. So they're really good for things like your website backgrounds, or if you've got a newsletter or something, you want a banner and you want to put some type on. And so this is the cottage in the story. So once again, very simple prompt, cinematic photograph of an old stone cottage with a thatched roof at dawn in the UK. So I add things that you can add things in like the UK or the US or a country, because that kind of helps with the how it kind of feels. And as you can see, it has been raining, which would be exactly how it would be here. It pretty much rained the entirety of summer, which I'm not moaning, obviously, but that's kind of how it is here, I'm afraid. And then, so to continue, a cottage window glows with light from inside. The garden is beautiful with herbs and flowers. The background is a forest. So, once again, just really simple, broken it up with a few full stops, just so that it reads it a bit better. I assume that's what it does. And I just thought having a light on, that kind of thing, gives that kind of a nicer, warmer quality. Once again, I used aspect ratio of 16:9 and style of 250. And these all come from the exact same prompt. Now, I'm probably better known for doing crime and thriller. I've done a fair few over the last 16, 17 years. So it's nice to try this sort of stuff out. This is sort of my bread and butter. I do Craig Martell's covers too. So I do this kind of stuff all the time. So the prompt is a cinematic photograph of a UK street during sunset. So once again, location, and how I'm thinking about the colors in my head of what that kind of the day would look like at that time of day. A 34-year-old man is walking down the center of the road wearing black jeans and a dark jacket. So that's super simple. That could be anything really, not a lot of detail there. So all of these are obviously remain in the aspect ratio of 16:9. But I've written on the images themselves what the extra bit is. So the extra bit for this one here, so a style of 100. So as you can see, it's done exactly what I've asked it to do. It's quite simple, but that can work. And then the style of 1,000. So I've maxed it out. Same prompt, and it's as you can see, that's what I mean by the style. It's really hyper, it's hyper real. Streets don't look like that, and it's very difficult to get a photograph like that. So I mean, it's trying to create Big Ben at least 3 or 4 times along here, which I don't think there are three. So that's what style does. So when that's down here 100, it's exactly what you've asked, pretty much. Up here, it's what you've asked, but it's really hyped it up. It's almost movie-like. And then here, the C, this is chaos. So I've maxed the chaos out. This is the same prompt, and this is what it creates. So, that's a great image. It's not exactly what I've asked for. I mean, he's not even walking away or anything like that. It's not sunset, so it's completely gone. But actually, sometimes you can do it, and it might give you an idea. So that's why I sometimes throw it in, just to see what might create. Okay, so that was Midjourney. I'm going to have a look at some questions now, just in case, before I move on to Photoshop. So what words could be used to get more of an illustration or hand-drawn feel? So I was doing something similar actually recently for a book I've been playing with. I've been playing with writing books for nearly 20 years, so it's never going to happen. But anyway, so yes, actually, just think about the style of illustration that you're looking for. So if it's digital art, so some of these here now in the background would be classified as digital art. You can say watercolor, and I have actually said a hand-drawn image in black and white or in monochrome of X, Y, and Z, of a place, of a thing, of a person. So if you know what the illustration style is that you want, that's what you would ask it for. So yes, it absolutely can. All of these here are Midjourney images. They're not mine. They're what they promote on their own site, which I thought were really good examples. So see sort of watercolor. This one is more digital art. This one's a bit more inky. And so yeah, so the next question from Hetty: do you take photos into Photoshop yourself? So yes, that's what the next bit will be. I'll show you a little bit of that, so you can see what you can do. And so this is from Joshua. You mentioned being able to use the same subject person in Midjourney for a new design for continuity. Can you briefly explain how to do this, please? Yes, it's not. Well, yes, it actually is kind of simple. So essentially, when you are using Midjourney, when you select a final image, you can click on that image and it will open it up as you saw. So you can just see it on its own. And you basically copy the link of that image. So once it's been upscaled, you can click the link. So then when you're writing your next prompt, so /imagine, it says prompt, you paste that link in. And then you write what you want. So then you say, she needs to do this, or she needs to be walking away instead of doing this, or whatever. And then it will use that image as its for its foundation to create from. It's the simplest way I can tell you. Actually, it's not. It's quite a simple way of doing things. And this is from Ingrid. How do you know if Midjourney comes up with existing illustrations who are copyright protected? So it can't do that. So these images that it creates are unique. The image that you'll see is not copyright protected. There is potential. It's not with Midjourney, so I can't say it's Midjourney, but I do know with Stable Diffusion there has been some issues around where they got their images from. And which is why they're going through some legal battles at the moment. It's an image that is used for the deep learning could have been copyrighted. by someone else. But I don't use Stable Diffusion, and I've been assured that Midjourney haven't done the same, but I might be wrong there. But what I can say is that the image that is created is unique. That is, and at the moment in the US can't be copyrighted, but in the UK it can, and in Europe as well. Okay, sorry. Let's move on. Making life easier with Photoshop AI. Now, this has been in beta for a few months, and I've been playing with it, and I've had some really good results. And now it's actually in the full Photoshop from yesterday, in fact, or no, from Friday potentially. So you can use it in any version of Photoshop that you have, as long as you've updated it. So this is my wife's book. Once again, I know I have permission to use this, which is good. I actually designed it as well, so I've got double permission, which is great. So what I'm going to do is just show you a very basic way of how AI can work in Photoshop. This is called generative fill. It's based on Adobe, so Photoshop's company, Adobe's very own AI that they've created using their own stock images. They got permission to use those, and any illustrators said no, they didn't use, but they were all compensated to be used in the library itself. And so they have their own little stock image site where you can do AI images similar to Midjourney. I don't think it's as good, but for Photoshop, it's going to save me a lot of time in some cases. Essentially, what you can do is you can either create images, which is not something I'm doing at the moment, but I'm actually using it to help me with the process to get things done faster. So for example, with this one, I'm just going to show you very quickly. I'm going to create merge the front and the back so that in the middle there's a spine. So first you need to take the text, because otherwise it will read the text. So I just want it to read the images. So I'm going to use the marquee tool. I'm going to hover it in the middle where I want it to be. So down, you can see it says generative fill. And I'm going to click generative fill here. And you can type something in if you want it to do something, but I'm just going to generate it. And it's going to come up with 3 options that I can use. You can keep doing this until you find something that you prefer. So that's not so great. Then that's not too bad. And that one's okay. So, and that's a really nice way of just sort of making, rather than me having to use a clone stamp tool or, going back and forth. Because, the thing about KDP is print on demand in itself is it actually prefers, I prefer to do a full cover without a blocked spine or without a hard edge. It really helps with it when it's printed, because as you probably know, when you get books back from KDP, sometimes the spine might be off a little bit, and if you've got a block on the spine, maybe the color might shift onto the front or on the back, or if you've got a hard line, so even if it's the same color throughout as it was there, if you've got a hard line, that hard line might shift to the front or the back. So it's nice to have a cover that kind of goes right across, so that if there is any discrepancy in where it's been folded, it doesn't matter so much. And so that's kind of great for that kind of thing. Now, you can do a whole back cover if you want to. So I could just have taken the front image and spread it across the back. However, with illustration, it doesn't work very well. And I found that the larger the generative fill is, the sort of the pixelation, there's more pixelation. So it's fine, but actually it can look a little bit like it's a bit low res, a little bit. So you end up having to do it in portions, which is fine, and it keeps the high res, but it's not as good. So it depends on the image. But in terms of something like this, which is actually quite complicated, it's quite nice to use it in sort of little ways like that. And someone mentioned before about taking one of the Mid-Journey images into Photoshop. So this is what I've done for an ad. So that size, that image there is the correct aspect ratio for a Facebook ad. And I'm just going to I plonk that image in the middle, and I'm just going to use generative fill to select. So I like to do it bit by bit. So I'll do the right side, because then if it's not correct overall, you're just going through back and forth and trying different things. So um, I'll do the right side first. It's taking its time. And then you can select one that works. And as you can see, that's pretty good. And now I would have had to have clone stamped that or added a new image in, and now I can do a bunch of ads for my wife, or well, mostly for my wife, and get through them really quickly. So there you go. And then I can use that as an ad, or I can add some text to it. I could shift her over to the right, and I could add some more, all sorts of different things. So it's really, really effective in Photoshop with their own generative AI now. It's really, it's going to be really helpful for a lot of people. I still quite like Midjourney for stuff. You can ask it to create an image like that for you using a similar prompt if you want. Yeah, so that's essentially AI art, where it is at the moment, and how you can use it and where you can use it across different places. I could go into so much more detail, but it's very early stages at the moment, and I wouldn't want to get ahead of myself with what you can do and what you're allowed to do. I'm not going to talk about covers themselves, as in, so generative fill. That's as far as I'm willing to go with covers. I don't want to use generative fill to create aspects like, say, a little house or a little image, or I might go as far as to say create some clouds, and that's because I'm a business and I work with my clients. If some new laws or rules come in, I don't want to be it will come fall back on me ultimately. I don't want to sound like that's a really big scary thing, because I don't think anything's going to happen, but it's just I'm just protecting myself, if you see what I mean. So I don't use it to create covers fully. You can, obviously, you can see the quality of the work that's created by Midjourney. It's not something that I am wanting to do for myself or for my clients just yet. But in terms of advertising and stuff, that's a little bit different. You're not really you're not copywriting your adverts for stuff. Anyway, that's me. Thank you very much. I'm open to taking some questions. I don't know what the best way you want to do it, but I'll just stop sharing this, and we can have a chat. Does that work for you?
Fantastic. Yeah, so there are some questions on the side, and also, as usual, if anyone wants to come off mute and just ask a question, you don't want to type it in, that is fine too. So if we go to, well, I think the last one that wasn't, there's lots of thank you, super informative. Oh, do you have samples of book covers you've created for romance novels?
Do I, from in terms of what I've designed myself, or with AI?
With AI.
Yeah, with AI, no, I haven't done anything with AI. No, like I said before, I'm not really using it to create covers themselves, but you can absolutely create some fantastic covers with adverts for romance, using the right prompts. I find actually, so with my wife's stuff, I found taking aspects from the story. So when she's describing a character, taking that and sort of editing it down, and then saying, she's in this room and it's like this, and then adding that as the prompt and seeing what it comes up with. And that's really helpful sometimes. So you can create some really beautiful adverts or banners or things for your website. I think that's as far as I'm I'm personally willing to go with stuff. But if you're doing it for yourself and you're happy to do it, that's fine. I should probably mention that. So KDP announced last week that going forward from that date last week, when you're uploading a new book, including your cover, it will ask you whether any part of it was AI generated. We don't know what that's for. I think it's possibly to do with actually data. It's kind of figuring out how many people are actually doing it and what they're doing, because they're certainly not anti-AI. They've got their own, they're creating their own programs and their own apps and everything. But yeah, so anyway, in terms of covers, I couldn't tell you, but I know that you could. I haven't created any myself, but I do know that there are lots of resources on Facebook, lots of groups, AI art for authors. I believe or probably most definitely is a group on Facebook who talk about stuff and they show different things. And I have definitely seen people create romance covers. So you could definitely do it for sure. Does that answer your question? Sort of. I haven't got an example, I'm afraid.
Yes. Okay.
So Hope, we'll go on to your next question. Can you recommend books or courses offered to learn more about AI? So you just mentioned something about Facebook and stuff. Any other recommendations?
I know Self-Publishing Formula are putting together an update to their advertising for authors course.
Nice.
I don't know when that's going to happen, but I do know that. So James Blatch, they spoke about it recently, actually, in their own podcast. He has been playing with it because he's an author now, and he's been playing with Midjourney himself. His books are set, in the sort of in the 40s, 20s, 40s. In war, it's very difficult to find those sorts of images. So he's been using it for that kind of thing, just for advertising, not for covers. So he's been implementing that, and I think he's going to add that to the course. So that's the only one I know for that, but I do know there are plenty of Facebook groups that talk about it, not just about art, but also about writing and creating ad copy, that kind of thing, which for ChatGPT, that kind of thing.
Okay. So then we have Randall says, with Midjourney, can you upload an image you own and have it show variations on top of it?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've done that with myself. I did it for I haven't uploaded photos of my kids, but they'd just seen the new Spider-Man cartoon movie, Into the Spider-Verse, and I wanted to see what we would look like as those sort of animated, just a bit of fun. So I uploaded a photo of myself and typed in, the prompt about trying to have the right style of imagery and stuff. So yeah, you can absolutely do that. It's what you do is you upload the image first, and as I said before, you then click on, once it's uploaded, you click on it and you find its link. You copy the link, and then when you're writing your new prompt /imagine, you paste that link, and then you say what you want. I also did it with so we've just come back off the summer holidays and I wanted to do a project with my daughter, so we said we were going to do a kid's book, and she came up with the whole idea herself, and she was doing some sketches, and it was about a sweetie monster who was eating all her sweets when actually it was secretly her eating them all, and so she was making up this character and all this sort of stuff, and she did these fabulous cartoons, and so I thought, actually, let's have a look and see what we could do. So I took photos on my phone of some of her characters, fed them into Midjourney, and I said, turn these into children's book cartoons, and they did, and they were really great. They weren't, as good as hers, obviously, but they were really cool. So yeah, absolutely, you can upload your own stuff.
Nice, nice. It sounds like your daughter's having fun too. That's fantastic.
It's very creative, yeah.
Then Rob says, can you use AI for the cover copy of a print book?
Cover copy. Oh yeah, so yes, of course, yeah. So ChatGPT and similar Bard, that kind of thing. I think you have to be a little bit more specific with those guys, and say, you are an expert at writing blurbs for books. I need a blurb for this. This is a synopsis of my story. These are the sorts of books that are working in that genre, X, Y, and Z, that kind of thing. And then it will come up with some stuff. You do need to work on those a little bit more. You need to tweak those a little bit more. But they can be really good. So yeah, you can use AI for that kind of thing.
Okay, terrific. Joelle says, can other people in your Discord channel upload any of the images you create within it, or can they only see your images? I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
I think so. In terms of the images that you're uploading yourself, so of yourself, potentially, that's why I wouldn't upload any of my children. If it's an image, you can see what people are creating. I've never tried to save another person's image, so I don't know whether you can or not. So I don't know whether but obviously they could take a screen grab if they really wanted it. So yes, potentially. So you have, as with all social media and any sort of aspects, you have to be kind of a little bit careful about what you do and be a bit cautious.
Okay, terrific. So that looks like, I mean, we'll give people a second if there are any more questions. Stuart, do you have a way for people to reach you if they're interested in having book covers made?
Yeah, it's stuartbache.co.uk. That's my website. There's a form on there that you can fill in to get in touch. Yeah, so yeah.
Sorry,
so hopefully that works. .co.uk.
Co.uk. I'm just going to type it in and then put it in the chat, but I want to make sure I've got it right first before. Oh, there we are. Nice. Okay, I will stick that in the chat. There is the link to Stuart's site. Very nice. Ooh, I like the girl with the flashlight. You can see all the books there. Fantastic. Well, that's a really nice website. Hey, funny enough. You're gonna,
yeah, well, yeah.
Surprise! Look, your website looks awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes I have a lot of time on my hands. So, I've got a little boy and he doesn't sleep very well. So sometimes I'm up and I'm like, I'll do something then.
You might as well if you're awake.
Yeah, I might as well do some work for myself. Yeah.
Terrific. Do you do any nonfiction book covers?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have. Yeah, there are sort of different ways of thinking of things. They're much more author involved, I think, because actually the topic can be aimed at very specific people, I think, so who are looking for that sort of thing. But yeah, no, I do nonfiction. I do romance. A lot of people use me for crime and thriller, but I do a huge amount. Actually, really popular at the moment is the sort of dark fantasy.
Yeah.
And there's a trend at the moment which I've been calling aesthetic shift. So you might have seen it with books like Ariadne and I've got a few of them here. Song of Achilles and people and things like that, where the covers are so much more illustrated and beautiful, but they're commercial. They're commercial fiction. They're not. That's usually reserved for literary fiction, but they're commercial fiction, and that style this year, the last couple of years, has been really big, and it's sort of growing, which is really interesting. It's really nice, I think, to have commercial books which tend to be so much more, the same, which is fine. Which is how we sell books, is to fit into the right trope and the right genre and that kind of thing. But it's nice to see a shift into something that's more beautiful. People are picking up books for different reasons, which is great.
So just to follow on that line on continuity, do you ever do series, and do you have to do those in a different way because the books are related? Do you know when you're starting a series, there'll be like book 2, 3, 4, etc.?
Yeah, actually, when you get a new series and they haven't written the rest yet, that's a great starting point because you know what you're working from. It's harder, I think, when the series exists and you're redoing them, because you have to look at all of the series as a whole, and some titles will be long, some will be short. So you have to kind of think, well, actually, I can't do a big title on this because 3 books down, it's really long. So I'll have to shrink that title down, and it might look a bit different. So I was actually for a long time known to be the series guy, and that was when I was in trad. So I worked on Stephen King and John le Carré, and I would take a series and rebrand the whole thing and take it from and sort of step back. So I did it for the UK versions of the covers, so you might not have seen them in the US. But for King, we did something very specific. Sorry if this is boring.
No, it's
Um,
not.
for King, so you might see on my on my screen before, I did the Carré cover. So what I did was we broke it up into sections, because at the time he had 52 books, and we broke it up into sections of like his chillers or his what were the other ones? Sort of the sort of more kind of suspense novels and stuff like that. So we broke them up and then we color coded it. So they were all the same design, same layout, but we had a different style of image on each one. And like the chillers were all red, white, and black, and had some textures on them and stuff. Whereas his suspense were a little bit more sort of psychological fiction kind of looking, but they all were the same style, and they all were color coded. So because the way we thought about it was, when you're rebranding, especially rebranding a series that's been out for a very long time, his fans are going to have the books. So how do we get people to buy who know, obviously everyone knows Stephen King, how do we get them to buy it? So I had a look at in our local bookshop, Waterstones in the UK, and I remember going up and looking at almost everything on that area. So it was a mix of sci-fi and fantasy and horror. It was all together. All of the spines were black. All of them were black. And I thought, okay, let's brighten them up so you can see King straight away. This is kind of, ebooks were big, but they weren't as big as they are now. So it was more like, what do we do in print? So we color coded the spine. So you could buy them as a section. You could say, buy these 5 books as the chillers and have them on your shelf, or you could buy the whole lot and they'd all still all match nicely in terms of where the type was and the layout, but they'd have slightly different colors going through, so you knew what kind of book. So you can do all sorts of stuff like that. It's really fun. And Le Carré, I made sure that I wanted a real lovely classic feel to them, so they were all very beautiful photographs and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's really cool.
Why would an author decide they want to rebrand all their covers?
Well, when I often get asked, it's at least once a month, someone will say, I'm doing really well, but sales are starting to slide off a little bit, and I'm wondering whether I need a rebrand. But I always warn people and say that unless it's really not working, you don't want to waste that money on, because there's all sorts of different reasons why sales start to go. It could be your marketing strategy. It could be all sorts of different things. It could just be August, which isn't a great month, or December, which sometimes ironically isn't a great month. So I always say make sure that this is what you want to do. But yes, that's usually the reason why. And what I would do is I'd have a look at their covers, and I'd sort of have I look at a lot of covers a year, and I'm researching all the time. So if I see something, I think, well, actually they're really good. What would be the point? I'm happy to say to a person, don't worry about I think you're fine. If in a year's time, 6 months, maybe 2 years time, it's really not working for you, then let's get back in touch. But I don't change it. And if it's only if it's really not working that you should just maybe have a thing.
Okay, and what about
and test it? You can test it too. You could just go with the next book, the new book, have a different cover and see how that works. And if that's working better, then you can recover the rest of the series.
Okay, and that makes sense. Now we have some authors who have self-published and the book hasn't done very well. They've taken the book down, edited it, rewrote it, put it back up. Um, is that a good time to do a new cover then if you're actually changing the book itself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's nice to have a refresh. But once again, only if you don't feel like the cover's working. Um, if it's not in the right genre, or if your genre's changed a little bit, crime and thriller, it's glacial in its change. It's pretty much still the running man. Man, shadowy figure. That's still works today. Lee Child still, it's what Lee Child covers look like here. Have done for probably 10 plus years. Mark Dawson as well. Um, but yeah, it depends. Like some genres, they have a complete change overnight. I worked on One Day, David Nichols, when I was at Hollywood Stoughton, and um, that cover wasn't my cover in the end because we worked on it as a team. But that cover was so different from everything in the genre. They were worried that it wouldn't work, but actually it created its own trope. So it was so unique, and this is rare for it to happen. Usually, you're best being familiar with your genre, but this was so big and changed everything. It did so well. It was on the bestsellers list everywhere. That cover started to replicate that. It became its own thing, and actually, it stayed. So that kind of more illustrative look that you see on some romance novels and stuff, where it's maybe very clean. So it might be just a color in the background with a couple of figures on, illustrated figures, and some handwritten type. That's really still based on what One Day did, the simplified look rather than a photographic look. So yeah, if you see that something's really doing well, and people, like I said about the aesthetic look in terms of the historical suspense or historical fiction, that kind of more aesthetic look, it's worth having a look and doing something like that if it's working in the genre and you're seeing it's working and it's everywhere in the bestsellers list.
Right.
But yeah, sorry, I can waffle on for hours.
Well, it's totally interesting topic. So Hope wants to know what type of fonts do you use on your book covers? And I kind of like to add that, are there fonts that you should avoid that just don't do well for ebook or print version?
um, I would say that if you're using anything that you think looks pretty, if you think that looks pretty, then you shouldn't be using it. So what I mean is, a lot of people get decorative fonts and they think that looks really nice, and sometimes you can't read it. Sometimes, because it looks nice for you, but you're not thinking about how is a person going to read this. So, and handwritten type is very popular. Cursive's quite popular sometimes. It has to be readable. So, for me, I'm really big on type, and I would tend to use. So there are no like hard and fast rules, but for me, when it comes to things like sans serif, so the type with the little legs, I would always go for things like for crime and thriller, I'd go for trade Gothic condensed. Always a good condensed font because then you can really, commercial fiction, you can boost the type, make it quite large, but it won't take up too much space because it's condensed. So condensed type sans serifs are really good. Knockout, which I use all the time. Um, in terms of historic fiction or dark romance or um, that kind of thing. There's some great fonts called things like Desire Pro, which has some really lovely glyphs. So a glyph is when you can highlight a letter in Photoshop, for example, and ask for the glyph. So it's variations of that letter. And sometimes you get nice little swirls. So in Desire, you get these beautiful little swirls, and you can add those in, and that really adds an extra character element to your whole cover. Yeah, so little things like that. So I recommend those sorts of fonts. But to be honest with you, it's about readability. If you're doing it yourself, it's about readability. It's about and looking. You can go find some covers that you like, and if they've got a simple enough background, you can cut out the type and put it into my fonts in what the font it's called on my font, and it will find a similar, if not that font, it will find a similar font. So that's always worth doing, which I do occasionally. But yeah, no, for me, it's all about readability. So I do have the same, like Gotham, that's a great font. Yeah, I do tend to use the same fonts.
Nice.
Garamond, that's really nice.
So we'll just end on Sarah Louise's comment. She says, and you're being shy here, not sharing. Stuart also has a book cover design course, which is excellent. Doesn't cover AI, but it covers everything from research design to finished product. And she's put the link here. Thank you, Sarah Louise.
Well, that's very nice of you. Very kind. Yeah, I'm terrible at stuff like that. Yeah, no, yes, I do have a course. It is based on an older version of Photoshop. They update all the time, things change, so I haven't updated it for a couple of years. But what I really wanted to do with the course was to make sure that you had an idea of how the process works in cover design. So it's not like what I've just done there. It's not quite like, showing you. There are aspects of that, like I do show you how to do different things, but for me, it's all about you understanding the genres and how to research and that kind of thing, and how to write a good brief. Because if you can't do it yourself, then it's a really good way of being able to talk to your own designer and how best to talk to them, and also understand the process a bit more. Yeah. Anyway, I hope everyone's enjoyed it. I really enjoyed putting this together. It's been really fun.
Yeah, Stuart, thank you so much for doing this and giving us a whole hour of your time and sharing your expertise. Really a pleasure. And I'm sure everybody learned a lot. And as you can see, our community is about kindness. So you've been very kind to come in here and share your knowledge with us.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you at the next event.
Bye. See everyone.
Bye.